What's in a name? Hello everyone, I'm Sarah from Everyday Starlet. Welcome to my channel. I make videos to inspire you to be the star of your own life. I wanted to talk about the topic of wives taking their husband's last names when they get married. And this is a topic that's been coming up a lot on social media, and I feel like a lot of people get really divided about the issue. So I just want to share some of my thoughts. I want to start off by saying that I hold zero judgment about whatever decision somebody has made or somebody will make about this topic. I really do think at the end of the day, it really does depend on the relationship and the individuals in the relationship. I don't really think that with most things that there's really a solid, clear-cut, one-sided answer. And I very strongly don't believe in judging people for making a decision like this that may not be the decision that you would have made. And I do see a lot of judgment about that. I see a lot of judgment like from men towards other men whose wives don't take their last name. And I see a lot of judgment from women on both sides of the issue, really. So for those of you who don't know, I was married. I had a very short marriage and a pretty messy divorce that happened several years ago. And one of the things I found really interesting about my own personal experience was, for most of my life, I had always wanted a very traditional relationship. And I kind of always assumed that I would take my husband's last name. To be honest with you, I never really gave it much thought. I just kind of assumed that that's what would happen. So I didn't get engaged until I was in my mid-30s. And as I was planning my wedding, when it came to the realization that I was going to be going through the process of changing my name, it hit me way harder than I expected. All these feelings were coming up. It was really emotional, and it started to really give me a lot of anxiety. Now, I wasn't expecting that because it was something I had always assumed that I would do. And I've never been someone who felt like I feared losing myself in a marriage or losing myself starting a family. Like, that was never anything that I really gave any thought to. So the fact that I was so terrified to change my name, it came as a surprise. And I think for one thing, I didn't get engaged until I was in my mid-30s. And I think when you get married young and you haven't really experienced much of life beyond just your basic schooling, I think it can be a little bit easier for you to then step into your life, step into adulthood with a different name. Whereas if you're somebody who has been living your life as an adult, and at a certain point for me, my name, I mean, I wasn't famous or anything, but I had established my name in certain fields that I had worked in. I felt more like it was my identity, it was my name. You know, I had worked as a stand-up comedian at that stage when I got engaged for like a decade. And I wasn't a famous comedian by any means, but I had made a name for myself with my name. And I was working on building my brand. I had started Everyday Starlet. I'd been doing that for a couple years when I got engaged. I had established my online presence under my name. It didn't feel like letting go of my father's name to take my husband's. It felt like this was my name. This is who I am, and this is who I've established myself as at this point in life. And the idea of changing that felt uncomfortable for me, and it definitely was freaking me out a lot. And I do want to let women know that even if you're totally on board with changing your last name, it's okay for you to mourn your old name. I mean, if you really want to change your name, but prior to that, you've had your name your whole life, and it's okay to mourn that. It's okay to feel feelings about letting go of whether it be that part of your life or just letting go of your name, even if that is the path that you decide to choose. Like, it's okay to feel a sense of loss over your old name, and I don't think that we give women permission to do that enough. So I personally made the decision because it felt right in my body at the time to keep my name professionally the way that it was before, and I decided to hyphenate my name after I got married. Now, I never thought of myself as being someone that would hyphenate her name. I didn't really necessarily want to, but I also knew the man that I was marrying was not going to be okay with me just not taking his name. And I also knew that I was not going to be one of those women where if someone referred to me as Mrs. and my husband's last name and didn't hyphenate it or something, I was not going to be one of those women who was going to be like, excuse me, that's not my last name. It wasn't that I was opposed to someone referring to me as Mrs. So-and-so. That wasn't his last name. It'd be really weird if his last name was so-and-so. Anyway, my apologies to anybody's watching if your last name is so-and-so. It was just, I think, the legal representation of it that was really giving me anxiety. I gotta be honest with you, I really wouldn't recommend hyphenating your name. If it's what you want to do and that feels good for you and that feels aligned for you, that's fine. I found it to be a huge headache. Just forms and some places you can't actually use a hyphen, considered like an alternate character, and then other places it was a pain. It was an absolute pain for me to deal with. I will also state that, so in the course of 5 years, I would say, 5 to 6 years, I got engaged, planned a wedding, got married, got separated, went through a divorce, and I had to change my name twice in the course of 5 years. The most painful part of that whole process was the 2 times I had to change my name. It is incredibly, incredibly mind-numbingly painful. It's just, I mean, you sit in the Social Security office for hours, like it's literally an entire day of just sitting in the Social Security office. And then you have to go to the DMV, and that's like a whole day right there. And it is just absolutely mind-numbingly frustrating. To be totally honest with you, I haven't even fully changed back everything that I had to change back. Like my passport's still not changed because it just got to be way too complicated, and I was just like, I couldn't handle it. And I do think when men are like, women should take a man's last name, and when men go through that stuff, I'm not saying that that's a wrong attitude to have, but men don't have to go through that part. Like, men complain about the divorce process, men complain about marriage, they complain about this. They do not have to deal with changing their name. And I will tell you right now, from going through a whole divorce and going through a mess, even planning a wedding that I did all by myself, like I did all the planning of it, planning a wedding when I had never even planned a dinner party before, like all that stuff was not nearly as difficult. Like breaking up a marriage, ending the marriage, all that stuff was not nearly as painful as having to go to the Social Security office and change my name. I'm not trying to discourage women from doing it, and I'm not saying I would never do it again if I decided to get married again. However, it's not easy, and it's a struggle that most men are never gonna actually have to experience. So I do think a little bit of empathy from men who want a traditional woman and want a traditional relationship, understanding the hassles that she has to go through in order to take a man's name. Giving her a little bit of empathy is really not too much to ask for. And to be totally honest, after going through this whole process and looking at the whole thing in hindsight, the fact that changing my name set me into such paralyzing fear and anxiety that I ended up, you know, hyphenating it, which is not something I totally ever thought I would do. It wasn't something that fully felt aligned for me. It just made me feel a little bit safer. I still stand by the idea that it is okay for women to feel feelings about this. It's okay for women to mourn the loss of their old name. The fact that I was so stricken by panic was a sign that what I was doing was not the right thing to do. It was a sign that I was not getting into this marriage with the right person. Now, if you decide not to change your name, I'm not saying that that means that you're not with the right person. However, for me, that absolute panic-stricken feeling at its root was really because I was terrified of getting married, because I knew that what I was doing was wrong. Like, my intuition knew it was wrong. My head thought it was the right idea, but my heart just really wasn't in it. My heart knew that it was not the right decision. My head was telling me it was the right decision, but my heart just was telling me that it wasn't the right decision. Now, in reality, if I were to meet someone and actually decided to marry them, for starters, I would definitely be listening a lot more to my intuition. And if I was gonna marry someone, I would definitely look for different things, and I've learned a lot from my experience. Would I change my name again? I don't know. I really don't have any interest in going through that name change process again. So the guy would have to be pretty darn fantastic in order for me to do that. But in reality, he would have to be pretty darn fantastic for me to actually go through getting married again. If I really did feel like I was marrying the person that I was going to spend the rest of my life with, and I did feel ready to commit to this person for the rest of my life, knowing everything that I have learned from my past, I think I probably would. And I definitely think if it meant a lot to him, I would probably go through it. I would need a lot of empathy, though, for how difficult it is to go through that process again, and he would need to love me a lot. And that said, if there were children involved, I would definitely want to have the same last name as my children, and I would want my children to have their father's last name. So that said, if I did decide to get married again, I don't think I would get married again if I wasn't marrying somebody whose last name I wanted to take. That said, I'm not saying it would be easy, and especially since, I mean, I'm even older now than I was before. I've established my name even more. I may keep my name professionally, and then I might change it legally. However, I do know that that's really complicated. It's just really a challenge, so I don't know. And I'm not making this video to discourage anybody from doing it or to encourage anybody to do it, because it's a really personal choice. And I think we get into this idea of, I hear men telling women that that's just what they should do. And I think you can be a very traditional wife, and I think you can have a very traditional relationship even if you don't change your name, because I don't really think that that surface thing defines your relationship. That said, I do understand the tradition behind it, and I respect the tradition behind it, and I think that if it is something that is really important to your future husband, I think it's definitely something worth considering, and I think it's something that is worth sitting down and having an open conversation about. Because I know in my situation, my ex, he didn't really want me to hyphenate it. He wanted me to take his name, but he didn't actually stand up and say that. And I think he harbored a lot of resentment towards me because I did things that way. Now, that's not really on me, because if somebody in the relationship doesn't speak up and it's just harboring resentment, you can't just blame the other person, because if you don't speak up and speak up what's on your mind, it's not really fair to the person to harbor resentment. So if you as a man are watching this and you have a really strong feeling about it, then I would encourage you to express that to your partner, and then also be willing to listen to her and what she's going through, and how, because it's a really good preparation for the conflicts and the different points of view that are going to come up in your marriage. So like, if you can't work through this issue before you get married, it's not a great sign for your marriage. So I'm not trying to encourage or discourage women from making any decision. I'm just sharing my experience, because it was a very unexpected thing that came up for me, and I'm sure I'm not the only one who has been through this or will go through that situation. So I hope that this video was helpful. If you enjoyed this video and found it helpful, please give it a big thumbs up, and be sure you subscribe to my channel. If you have any thoughts on this topic or any other topics you'd like me to cover, let me know. Leave a comment in the comment section below. I'd love to hear from you, and I love your suggestions. If you're a woman who wants to connect to her feminine energy, I have an online course called Feminine Radiance. Details in the description box below, along with links to all my social media accounts. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you join me next time.